Thank you so much for coming out. I cannot thank you enough, especially braving the snow today. It's great to have you here. I want to give you a bit of background on the task force and have our members introduce ourselves and tell you a little bit about the mission and goals of the task force, and then give you sort of an overview of what I've got planned, what we all have planned for today. After that, I'll hand you over to our organizers who will give you the details. As you probably know, the Illinois Department of Transportation has been collecting data on traffic stops for quite a few years now, and they're looking specifically at racial disparities. And like many other places, Urbana has a huge racial disparity when it comes to traffic stops. The most obvious statistic being that African Americans are pulled over twice as much per population as any other group. And statistics we've looked at show that there's no particular difference in, accident rates or anything like that. Many folks in the community, including some of the folks I see here today, went to the Urbana City Council to ask why this discrimination was happening and what we could do to stop it. Thankfully, the City Council stepped up. Early last year, they created a task force to try and answer those questions. And we got our start pretty much last summer. July was our really first effective getting to the work meeting. And we've been given about a year to prepare a report to the City Council. So let me start by having all of the task force folks introduce themselves. Like I said, I'm Pete Resnick. I'm chair of the task force, and I sort of ended up volunteering for this because I'm also on the Human Relations Commission, the Anti-Discrimination Commission in town, and so I've got some interest in working on these issues. And so why don't we just go around.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Patricia Avery, and I am the chair of the Impact Committee, which brings you here today. So thank you for coming out, as Pete said, and braving the snow. I'm also the Champaign County NAACP president. This is an issue that we have been looking at ever since the data was collected back in 2004. Actually, we knew there was a problem prior to the data, but the data helps us to see it in black and white. Today, we'll have an opportunity to actually get the human factor, which I think is much more important than the numbers. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Paul Testa. I'm a graduate student in political science at the university and the chair of the statistics subcommittee. So in collaboration with Shinji and Will and Eric, I spend a lot of time looking at the data and asking sort of what can the data tell us. What we also think about is that there's a lot that the data can't tell us, and that's why a meeting like this is so important. And glad you're here and look forward to hearing from you.
Hi, my name is Shinji and I'm faculty at the College of Business at U of I. I was asked to join this committee, and I jumped at the chance because the topic is related peripherally to part of my research, and also as a resident of Urbana, I wanted to learn more about what was happening and what we could do to help move things in the right direction. Thank you so much for coming.
I'm Eric Jacobson, and I am the designated City Council representative on the task force. And maybe one reason why I was asked to serve in that capacity, I obviously am not subject to discrimination as a driver because of my race, but Naomi and I do have two African-American children, and so we did go through the experience, have gone through the experience of dealing with discrimination based on race from various institutions, including law enforcement, as being, through our parenting experience.
Hi there, I'm Andy Charles. I'm the police department representative on this committee. I've been with the city of Urbana for 27 years. I grew up in Urbana. I have family that live in Urbana. I've lived in Urbana most of my life. and I have a deep interest in seeing that we have the best police department that we can have. So we're trying to learn some things and take some ideas back and make it a better police department when we're done.
Hello everyone, my name is Alejandra Coronel. I've been in this community for around 17 years. I'm coming from Venezuela. The reason that I'm being part of this committee is because the mayor asked me to serve and kind of give a perspective about the Latino community here. And I'm also interested in community policing relationship. And so that is why I'm here. And thank you all for coming. And we're looking forward to hear from you, what has been your experience and being in a traffic stop. And the result of this is going to help us to make recommendations to the city and how we can improve and how we can make a better job in our community.
Good afternoon. It is really energizing to see this many people out, given the kind of weather that we've had. My name is Nicole Anderson Cobb. I am a 3-time alum of the University of Illinois. I'm currently teaching hate crimes for the Department of African American Studies at the University of Illinois. So, as many of us do, we wear multiple hats. I'm also a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority. I'm actually the Connections Chair, and the Connections Chair is the public policy wing of the sorority, and one of our very important platforms for the next 4 years is grand juries, policing, and social justice within the African American community. And so there are several of my sorority sisters who are here, Sora Desiree in the back, Sora Annette, and others will be coming. This is a very important issue to Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority, and so in addition to the work that we're doing as a task force member, this is an organization that is really very much concerned with these issues too. So as a task force member, I am involved with the police procedure and public engagement committee. Myself, Alejandra, Andrew, and we're working to figure out how to help the public better understand police procedure and also interested in helping create a bridge between the police department and the communities that they serve. So I look forward to all of your contributions this afternoon.
This is afternoon, morning. Good afternoon. Will Kyles from the City of Champaign, council member. I too express thanks for everyone coming out. My role in the committee is a stats guy. I work with Paul and then Alderman Jacobson to provide the raw data and allow the team to basically come up with the conclusions that the data that the raw data stated. I'm also interested in police community relations. I've done a lot of that in Champaign, and in general, I believe that we're all one community, and so it doesn't seem abnormal for me to be in Urbana, specifically because my district borders Urbana, and so there's a lot of like and similarities and things that we can help each other on. So I look forward to the feedback and input, and look forward to making this, helping making this task force the best that it can be and what it was designed to do.
Thank you. And I did want to recognize we've got a bunch of city officials around. I see the mayor is here. Thank you for coming down. Diane Marlin, Bill Brown, Charlie Smythe is hiding behind me. We have Mike Munson, our city chief of staff. Deb Finan from Champaign is here. Well, thank you all for coming down. I'm so glad that we've got folks listening. So I said I did want to go over a couple of things. You heard a little bit about each of our committees. We've got our statistics committee that's been working through analyzing the statistical data for the traffic stops and looking for which areas of the city are seeing the most traffic stops, types of violations people are being stopped for, et cetera, to see what's causing some of the disparities and what we can do to change things. And as Nicole said, we're also going through the different police procedures, community engagement with the police, figuring out how these might be contributing to this disparities. We've been looking through the social science literature. Eric has been helping us do that, trying to find out what experts are saying are the causes of some of the disparities we're seeing, the social and practical effects that these have on communities such as ours. But the other piece, the last major piece of our work is about community impact. And that's really why we've asked folks to come here today. We want to find out the real effects of these traffic stops, what kinds of effects they're having on people in our community, everything from social and emotional impacts to very concrete financial and physical impacts of traffic stops. In a real sense, our report needs to explain how these disparities in traffic stops damage our community, independent of why the traffic stops are happening and why the disparities exist. And that's where you come in. Today is likely to be a bit different than other town hall meetings you might have been part of. We are here to listen, not to talk. The most important goal of this meeting is to hear from the community. We want to hear about your experiences with traffic stops, whether they're your personal experiences or those of loved ones or friends or folks you know. We want to know how those experiences are impacting you. We aren't asking for you to dialogue with city officials or police about how to come up with solutions in this forum. We're wanting to find out what your experiences are in the current state of affairs. And so with that, let me stop talking. I'm going to hand over things now to Patricia Avery, who is the chair of our Community Impact Committee, and we'll let her get started with explaining how we're going to run this in the details.
Well, I was going to let our moderator kind of give you an outline of how our day will go, and I just want to introduce him, and I think that Sam will be able to provide for you how the flow of the day will go. So I'm going to stand up because I think when I introduce Mr. Sam Smith, I think it's appropriate to stand up. Sam Smith is a father of 3 adult children, 2 men and 1 young woman. Although an original New Yorker, he has spent most of his adult life living and working in the Champaign-Urbana area. Trained as a social worker, Sam has worked for schools, community centers, and other organizations that serve youth and families and build community. He is currently on the staff at the Krannert Center for the Performing Arts at the University of Illinois, and I would ask you to please join me in welcoming my longtime friend, Mr. Sam Smith. Thank you.
So it's funny that Patricia says that I'm going to tell you how things are going to go, because actually I have absolutely no idea. I'm actually filling in for someone else, and so I will be doing the best I can to help us make it through. I want to remind you that the purpose of the meeting here today is for those members on the committee to listen to the impact that these stops with this documented racial disparities have on people's hearts and minds and sort of have on our communities. So I want to make sure that we know that that's the purpose. There are a lot of people here that I know that do really fierce work in our community, that care a great deal about what happens in this community, that are much better informed than I am to facilitate a conversation. But unfortunately, you're stuck with me with this. So I'm going to ask you, I'm going to point something out, and then I'm going to ask you to do something that we always ask children to do. There's sort of one child here, right? When we send our kids to school, we say, get to know people, right? And if kids come home and they're not getting along, we say, well, you just got to try much harder to get to know that person. So I'm going to ask you to do that. But I want to point out the way that you are seated. And it just dawned on me because it's very interesting. When bovines, herd animals, are in places where the young are being attacked by predators, they often put themselves in this kind of configuration in order to sleep. And then the younger animals, they sleep in the center so that they are protected by the older and the stronger animals on the outside. I think it's really interesting that you find yourself in this kind of position as our community to think about the impact of living in this community on maybe other members of the community. I just found that startling that that's where we are. So here's your assignment. There's probably someone in the room who you don't know, who you've not met, and I would like to give you 2 minutes or 3 minutes to go and meet someone who you don't know and who you've not met. Before you do that, there may be people who are easier to meet, right? So you might look at this guy over here and says, oh yeah, he looks like my son. I'm gonna go over and say hello to him. They're probably about the same age. There may be people who are more difficult to meet for one reason or another, who you are more unlikely to meet. So I wanna give you permission, just like we would with a kindergartner or a first grader, to take 2 or 3 minutes and meet other folks in the room that you've not met.
Okay, so may I have your attention just for a moment? Okay, may I have your attention just for a moment? I still don't want you to sit. So what I want you to do is, if you are a person who came here in order to share what your experience has been in terms of stops by the police, would you raise your hand, please? If you are someone who came to share. So what I'd like for you folks to do is I'd like you to move closer to the center of the circle and occupy the seats in the center of the circle. And if you are a person who is on one of the committees for the city and you came specifically to listen, I'd like you to sit around on the outside of the circle. Are you both? Oh boy. All right. So Kathy, who some of you have met, just said there aren't too many of you who actually came to sort of share your experience. Just a little bit of housekeeping. The bathrooms are out the door down the hall to your right. If you would either silence or break your cell phones now, that would be great. So again, just kind of thinking about the configuration that, the reason that we are here is to listen to the experience that we are having in our community. We're all old enough to know that this gentleman's experiences are not separate and distinct from mine. That what happens to him will reverberate through the community and have an impact on me. And so listening to each other is one of the best things that we can do for each other. So we'd like for each person that wants to share to take about 3 to 4 minutes. We want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to share what their experience has been. I also ask you to hold your comments about what people have to say. We're not trying to correct people or, again, offer solutions, but we are trying to listen. Does anyone have any questions before we get started?
I'd just like to be the first to make that, I don't know if it's a statement or whatever.
Would you move to the center? Yeah.
I'm Carletta Donaldson, a longtime Urbana resident here, and I have several concerns, but today, I guess once I saw the notice on what was happening, I thought we were coming together for the committee to let us know up until this point where we were. And so I see that it's a totally different, because in my mind I'm thinking, we've heard from, so we'll never hear from the entire committee. We've heard from segments of the committee, And we just wanted to see where you were at. And then I'm learning today that there's also been an extension, because I've been sitting through the city council meetings, and they said, we're gonna work on this for a year. The task, I think it was, the charge was given in April of last year, so I'm thinking, okay, we're down to a month. What can Carletta do, or round up some people to do to help the committee move forward? So if I do leave out, that's the reason why I am leaving, because I'm ready to move on. I mean, and not for an extension of this task force, because that time is money, and there are issues, other issues as well. So I just thought I'd say that at the urging of a committee member. Thank you.
Well, let me just first say that we're all volunteers on the task force, so we're not getting paid to do this. But Carletta, we're requesting an extension. That has not been approved by council, so I'm sure some of the council members are like, really? It's been extended? So it has not been extended, but we are asking for that because we would like to hear from the community, particularly that these impacts do have a profound effect on some people. I have a lot of stories I can tell you from people who have shared with me some of the devastating impacts that minor traffic stops have had on their lives. I can share with you a number of stories that I've heard, but we need to hear from those people that have been impacted by these traffic stops, what it has meant on their lives. And so this is another part of the human factor that we are collecting, which I think is the most important piece, to hear from people. So I think we just have to go through the process to make sure that we get what we need to write our report. So it's not coming from us, it's coming from the community. So who would like to be first to share with us?
My name is Kathy Wall, and my son is an African American. He's actually African Brazilian, but he's been in the United States since he was 5 months old, so he's now an African Brazilian American or something. And he appears to be like any other African American. I have so many stories. He has been stopped so many times that I don't know where to begin. It started when he was 15, and his white friends were not frisked, and he was. But I guess I'll go with the most recent offense. He is a senior at Eastern, and he had finished his last final in December, and then had gone to Macy's to work during the busy holiday season. He had gotten off at midnight and went to celebrate by eating at Mary Ann's Diner, eating and drinking coffee, and on the way home was stopped, which is not at all unusual, and ended up he was stopped for going less than 10 miles an hour over the speed limit. He can't remember if it was 4. He didn't end up getting a ticket, let's put it that way. The officer was behind him and used the words that he clocked him, but that's not what I'm upset about is the way he is treated after he is stopped. And in this particular instance, he was very cold by the time it was all over. It was a day he should have been celebrating, being done with his last final, one of the last semesters that he was in school. And instead, he ended up out in the cold. At one point, they questioned him, I guess, rather rudely about the game they had in his car, Uno Moo Uno, something that is my granddaughter's game, and said, "Why do you have that?" And he has a car seat in his car. They should have had no reason to ask him something like that. But again, it's one of many, many stories. I witnessed one time, I'll just keep probably talking till my 3 or 4 minutes are up. I witnessed one time that I asked him.
Keep track of yourself.
Oh, okay, I'll keep track. I'll make one more incident. The one that I witnessed, we were in the park, and I had asked him to come because his son, this was about 7 years ago, his son was fishing and it was just too cute. He was in the middle of getting his hair braided, and it looked pretty disheveled. But I asked him to come, and we were walking to separate cars on the way back, so nobody knew that I was with him. And he was stopped in the park, this was at Crystal Lake Park, and rudely, and I was there and I witnessed it, rudely asked how much he had had to drink as he was getting in his car. He had had nothing to drink other than orange pop. And it went on from there. It escalated because I intervened and they asked me not to. In the end, at one point, I thought I was going to get arrested. They asked me to shut up. I mean, they told me to shut up. And then they asked me a question and I answered it. And they said, the one officer said, I told you to shut up. And I said, and then you asked me a question. The other officer said, this has gotten out of hand. But at one point they said, well, we must have smelled the alcohol from the baby wipes in the car, and that's why we thought you'd been drinking. They had no reason to think that he had been drinking. And again, this is dozens of incidents. At one point, my grandson was impacted. He has type 1 diabetes. His diabetes bag was rummaged through, and my son had to finally, and he is much calmer about it than I am, had to finally say, would you please stop going through my son's diabetes bag? Again, countless incidents, many more than I could share in this time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Umar Johnson, and I've been stopped 3 times in the last 5 days. Going over. Yeah, and all of them was warning tickets. And searched my car last night, had me out in the cold for 15 minutes. It's ridiculous.
We're part of what we're trying to do is to understand the kind of effect that being stopped has on people. But one of the women that spoke before you, while she didn't talk about being stopped, you might notice that she did talk about the frustration in having the city make progress in resolving this issue. So here's a citizen who's not complaining that I'm being stopped and that's having a personal impact on me, but knowing that this is a problem in the city. So is that someone who's likely to vote? Is that someone who's likely to be civically engaged? Or is that someone who's likely to turn off going to city council meetings and being involved in their city? So part of what we're trying to understand is, so what? You got stopped a few times. What kind of impact is that having on you personally? What does that mean to you?
Well, I think it's profiling because, you know, I mean, after running a check on you and all that, they go back into your background and stuff, and then that leads to something new, you know, like last night. You know, how they check your background and stuff and everything. And then if it's something that you've done in the past and you moved on from that, it still brings that up and, you know, treat you like if you're still on, you know, the same thing, you know, used to doing stuff.
Right. And that's some of what you're describing is that once they stop your son, then they search the car, then they search the bag, and so it's not just a question of just being stopped on the street and then you're free to go, but they begin to dig, and then what I'm assuming is that I'm assuming that the impact of what you're sort of describing is that the impact on you as a citizen is that it starts to infringe on your rights. You have less rights, less freedom of movement. It feels much more invasive. Okay, so thank you.
I've been stopped 3 times in the last 5 days.
Who's next?
I'm Martel Miller. I've probably been dealing with the racial profile problem in the family since 2004. And this started for me and Patrick started mentor for the at-risk kids, real at-risk kids. So when we were talking to them about the mentor program, they started talking about to us about the police. And so we were trying to give them our advice. They would hang around the wrong people, doing the wrong things, and stuff like that. And from that, we started watching what they were saying to us about what was going on with the police. So we started watching traffic stops. We started watching interaction with the police in the community. And from what we found out, what they were telling us was true. All they had to do was get in the car and take off driving, and they get stopped. And then when they get stopped, they get tickets and things to go to court. And that was like in 2004. And then I had a conversation with Mike Beasley. I don't know if Kyle was the chief at the time, but that's who connected me. And we were talking about the stops with the police. And now, 10 years later, we're still talking about the stops with the police. And when Beasley was talking about it, he was talking about more community policing, having the police where they have the conversation with the people that they were police instead of just driving through the neighborhood and doing investigative tactics. from that, me and Billy had like a little relationship. I would come down to the police department, talk to him about some traffic stops. He'd show me their traffic stops, explain to me why they were stopped, and things he see wrong, things I seen wrong. And then he left. And then it got back to where it was. You know, where I look up, my daughter has been stopped, my sons has been stopped by the police. I had a son stopped, and then the officer told him, and this is a Urbana police officer, that if he goes buy drugs, I'm out there when he tells me this, that we could do something with this ticket. So it wasn't just the police stop that he was doing, he was trying to get an informant. You know, now, these things we got to talk about. If we're talking about police stops, we can talk about the stops, but we can talk about why the stops happen and what tactics they use in our community. Sorry about that. And now, I look, we had an expert that was working on the traffic stops, wasn't allowed to be on the committee, in which that really upset me, because Daryl been talking about with these traffic stops, and he's very informational for the people on this committee. So I really want to know how true this committee is about these traffic stops. I know the people on there were appointed, but the person that did the research and got the information about these traffic stops wasn't allowed to be up here on the task force. And that's a political move. We can't do political moves, we try to do problem solving. Right. So I just want to know where this is going, because we talking about the same thing that I talked about 10 years ago. Are we trying to solve the problem? We had a person in place that was working on solving the problem, and then it changed back to how it used to be. Then we get a task force. How far are we going to go with this? Are we trying to solve something, or just trying to put a Band-Aid on a deadly wound? Okay.
So again, you're in my mind, you're connecting with Ms. Donaldson's frustration. This problem's been around for a really long time. Why aren't we doing something about it? While you were describing your son being stopped and the officer asking him to go and buy some drugs, this woman here was nodding her head as if that's something that she has heard before. But I also want to go back to your first comment where you started, where you said you and Patrick were starting to work with some at-risk kids, and that this is the way I understood that, is that a part of what got in the way of them moving forward is that they essentially said to you, you're trying to get us to do something different, but look at what these police officers are doing.
Right.
And you're saying that was 10 years ago. So just imagine, just in terms of thinking about the impact of these kinds of stops on people, just imagine all the young people that were in the situation that those young people were in, where no one intervened, just their level of frustration with knowing this kind of thing is happening with police and happening to them and their friends, and it kind of gives you an idea of sort of the impact of this sort of thing on young people.
Right.
Right, okay. Who's next?
Somebody else.
Someone else? All right.
Hello, my name is Michael Davis. I believe there's a difference between racial profiling and offender profiling. Now, for instance, I've had my share of troubles, and I have my share of turnarounds, you know. And for instance, by me trying to become a better person and become a citizen here, I've been pulled over. And I know I ain't breaking no law, you know, and I got pulled over, and he said, for instance, one guy said, "Yo kind." Now, and that's after reading my background, because I'm pretty sure you read my background. You cannot judge a person and treat a person a certain kind of way because of his background. And, you know, everybody has their share of stories, but it comes a time when you have a person, I got locked up when I was young. and I'm just, I'm just coming home. So if I'm getting pulled over every time you see me drive something nice, it doesn't mean it came from a drug deal. It doesn't mean, you gotta give the old saying, you can't judge a book by its cover, or whatever it is. But it affects me, because it makes me think, well, shit, if you think I can have that mindset, but I don't have that mindset, that if you're gonna keep pulling me over, you're gonna keep judging me every time you see me trying to increase my life daily, what the hell? Why not go back out there? You have people that have that mindset, and you can drag a person back to that, Right. So is it right that because you see a person, or you know a person, it could be specifically because you know them from the neighborhood, is it right to pull them over? Right. No, it's not right. Now, if it's yesterday you seen him and he didn't have a driver's license and he's driving again, oh well, you got all right to do, but just to do it, I'm not from here. So you have no reason to just stop me if I'm not breaking the law. I've been pulled over 4 times. And then one of the cars was mine, it was all criminal. And it wasn't illegal, it wasn't given by, nothing illegal. It's just the point that a person, you can judge a person just so quickly because maybe I looked a certain way, maybe, yeah, it could be young black male, it could be, I'm not trying to make it pure racial, but at times it is, at times it is. What is it right now? Because if I don't have the mindset that I have today, and you would have caught me 10 years ago, hey, man, you know what? You give me F the police. Right. And nobody, as citizens, I'm trying my best to be a citizen. Right. To vote, to progress in life. Give me that chance. Don't, you can deter a person by simply pulling them over every time you get a chance.
Right. So you made a distinction between racial profiling and what you call offender profiling. And what I'm hearing you say very clearly at the end, I'm glad you use these words about citizenship, that being stopped, if you're being profiled, can undermine citizenship. Did y'all hear that? Real clearly, right? And that's also part of where Martell was with these youth, right? And he's trying to work with youth and bring them into responsible, productive citizenship, but because this thing is happening with the police, it can undermine their willingness to be productive, committed, responsible citizens. And the other thing that I heard you say, that I think I heard you say, is that one of the impacts of these kinds of stops is to put people in their place. You're not supposed to be driving a nice car. Yes. And every time you drive a nice car, you're going to get stopped.
Exactly.
Right? So it tells you that there's a place for you, which is in a raggedy car or in a certain neighborhood. So it kind of puts people in their place and locks people in to a certain relationship with the police and a certain capacity to live a full life. That's another thing that I took from what you were saying. Someone else want to? 3 or 4 minutes? We can come back if you want to add something else.
My name is Lorraine Colbert, and I want to talk about one time I was stopped, and I think it was a racial profiling stop because I was coming from over here at the Civic Center from a wedding reception, and I turned on E and Goodwin. Police got behind me at that point, followed me all the way over to Beardsley and Goodwin. And when I turned, he turned his lights on. He came up to the car, and my thought is that he's going to be shot because it's not a black male driving his car. Because I got my hair natural, and I'm dark-skinned. So he came up to the car, he looked in and saw me, he said, well, do you know why I stopped you? I said, no. He said, well, your back wheel hit the curb of the sidewalk when you turn, which on that corner, the sidewalk is almost even with the street. So I said, okay, so gave him my license and my insurance card. I've never had a ticket at any time. So he goes to the car and he comes back. He said, well, I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you a citation. So I didn't think no more about it. So one day I got to looking at the citation, and it was for illegal lane usage. And I was just disgusted with myself because I didn't catch it when it first happened. The next time, about a month ago, I was in a car accident on the corner of Springfield and Prospect. My car hit some black ice, and my brakes wouldn't apply. So I hit this lady's car, hit a light pole, police came, and so, I explained to him, what happened was I tried to stop, I hit an ice slick and the car wouldn't stop. So, he did call the salt truck out, and then they started putting salt on the road. But he gave me a ticket for disobeying a stoplight. And I said, well, I'm giving you a good quote on it. I said, well, I just didn't disobey it. I said, my car wouldn't stop. I would have stopped. He said, well, had the light changed? I said, yeah. He said, was it your time to go? I said, no. He said, well, okay, then you disobeyed the stoplight. There's nothing I can do, just pay, I think it's $140. That's probably $140 just to give away. It's the end of the story until I go to court next month. See what's happening.
Wow.
And how I felt was, I felt like, I was being, taken for granted, or just, just a waste of time, and just all kind of feelings, that, I wouldn't have thought about. Is this because of my color, or what,
That's, one of the things that I heard you say in your description was that you're well aware of the fact that because you're a dark-skinned black woman and you wear your hair in a particular way, that you are likely to be mistaken for a perpetrator. You're likely to be identified as a perpetrator. And that can happen in your car, or in the supermarket, or walking down the street. And even though you've never had a ticket before, that you carry that with you when you drive.
And Sam, I just want the audience to know that that's Ms. Lorraine Cowart, who is an elected official. She's been on the Champaign County Board for probably 30 years, and this has happened to her. And so we thank you for sharing your story, Lorraine.
From what he said, about how he's profiled, and how she said she's profiled by how she looked with her natural hair, that just rung a bell in my head. When we talking about these traffic stops, we got to put the traffic stops with the drug war. We ain't putting the traffic stop with the drug war, we defeating the purpose of even having this discussion. Because what they're saying, they're being profiled from something that's been put on black, brown, and poor, called the drug war. It's unsuccessful. They say it all over the country. It's unsuccessful. It ain't causing no problem. And black people ain't the only ones doing drugs. White people do drugs just as much as blacks. My statistics person says more. But the people, we have 80% of our police department is Caucasian. They're not going to put these laws and these investigative tactics on their own. So they pick the people they're going to put it on. and it comes out to be black and brown. So if we want to talk about the traffic stop issues, let's talk about these drug stops, this drug war that's not successful, which they continue to get equipment for, so they'll continue to do things that they do with the drug war. So if we're not going to connect that traffic stop with the drug war, to me this conversation is dead. It's not going to move forward, because that's the part he's saying. He likes a nice car. The police connect nice cars to drug dealers. And when he's driving around black male, he says he's not doing anything, but he's getting stopped. I had a stop one time right over here on Illinois Street, where I stay. Walking down the street, bothering nobody, with a sack from a gas station in my hand. Officer pulls up beside me, asks me where I've been. So I look at him and say to him, why? He asked me where I'm going. Why again? I asked him, do he needs my ID? He don't answer my ID. So we had a little back and forth conversation. Then it was 3 people walking across the street. I asked him, was he gonna stop them and see where they going or see where they coming from? After that little conversation, he drove away, but he had no right. And like I'm saying, we talk traffic stop. We got to talk about the other stops, the other things that go along with the young black male. And somehow we having this conversation about the young black male. We got one here. I said he's probably about 35. 32. I'm pretty close.
That's about 35.
Yeah, I'm pretty close. But we don't have the one that is affected. Soon they get their license. My son Calvin got his license at 16. Before he was 20, he had been stopped over 14 times. I ain't been stopped 14 times in my whole entire life. Now I used to drive like a maniac. You know, and this is how they. And we need to do some tracking from the high school schools, from when they get their license, when they get stopped, when do they lose their license? Because once you lose your license, you lose a bunch of job opportunities. It affects your community and your life so bad when your license are taken, and they're using tactics, and they write us tickets even more. You know, we need to, if we're gonna do the research and deal with it, let's come out with solutions. Some we're gonna hand the police department and say, here are things we're not gonna allow you to do anymore. Now, if you got a suspect or you got a reason to do an investigation, do it, but you don't break the law to make the law. Right. And that's the conversation we got to really have in this room.
I want to go back to something. I think it's Mike, right?
Yes.
When you pointed to Mike, it made me think of something. That even if a person has a history of it as an offender, they still have rights, right? And there's sometimes this sense that if you have a history as an offender, that you don't have rights, right? And you don't have, or even if you are the perpetrator of a crime, one still has rights, right? And so the other thing that I want to kind of pull out, the purpose is to talk about the impact of these traffic stops. And one of the things that I heard you say, Martel, is that one of the maybe consequences of being so focused on traffic stops and how many and where they happen and who it happens to, that it doesn't allow us, it keeps our focus off of a larger racialized issue with young black males or with the African American community, and that we need to put traffic stops in that broader context.
Right.
Right? Okay. And you can easily sort of say, it's just kids getting stopped by the police and then they get shooed on. But then you can think about, like you said, the economic consequences of losing your license, the diminished sense of being a citizen in our city, and there are broader implications for us than, oh, it took 12 minutes out of the day and the cop was a jerk, right? Thank you. Anyone else sitting in the center?
Yes. Well, it's no secret for me though, but I have a federal probation officer, and I go to this class for mentoring, for reentry or whatever. I finished the class and I went back to the class just to keep my head stay focused on certain things. The other day we was talking, and one of the guys in the class
Every time we get pulled over, have contact with an officer, it's automatically reported to the federal probation office, regardless. If you talk to them, they ran your name or anything. So this particular guy was at the gas station. He wasn't driving in the car with his girl, right? And he goes in the gas station and comes back out. He's from here, from Urbana. Now, he gets back in the car. They drives down the street or down the road, wherever they go. He gets pulled over. She gets pulled over. He's in the passenger seat. The officer stops him, stops the car because he said he wanted to see was he driving. Clearly, I'm not driving if you see me getting in the passenger seat. It's just simple things that could drive a person, Now that we can use as racial, that we can use as racial profiling. Not only offender profiling, so I asked a question in the class and I asked him was the tags or anything in the name. Now the guy been gone for 5 years, he just came home. The car was registered in both their names. And by him being in whatever trouble he was in the past, when they ran the plates, it automatically come back to him too. So they figured out a way to justify what they was doing, And it's not, if you see me getting in the passenger seat, you shouldn't have to justify. It's, and then you have young kids. I lost all my teenage, basically all my teenage years. And I'm not saying I'm proud of it, but at the end of the day, I made a choice to do what I had to do. And don't get me wrong, the police officers have to do their job. It's a certain way to do things, I had to learn that the hard way. It's a certain way that you have to do things. It's a certain way that you have to pull a person over. You gotta have a reason to pull a person over. I got stopped. God, I know I wasn't breaking the law. I'm scared to death. I know I'm scared. I got pulled over. I know it happens to young. And if they keep running to the police officers like that, who's to say where their mindset can go? I'm not no psychologist or nothing, but it happens.
Just by a show of hands for everyone in the room. So Mike says, when the police pull him over, he's scared. Just a show of hands. When the police pull you over, are you scared? Just a show of hands. Okay. So almost every citizen present is fearful when they're pulled over by the police in this room. Almost every citizen present in this room is fearful of the police when they're pulled over. That's pretty powerful.
Can I correct something? Yeah. But the reason I say what I said is because I know I have done wrong.
Right.
And it made me bring in the mindset, shit, what have I just done?
Right. Well, we've done wrong too, Mike.
Yeah,
it might not be the same wrong, but you can bet that we have too. But then there are people here who may not have broken the law, who are also fearful when they're pulled over by the police, and that's pretty powerful.
I will say that I'm not afraid of the police as afraid of the ticket by itself. I'm not afraid of the law enforcement. I'm afraid of the ticket and the consequences of the ticket.
Right. The consequences of being pulled over. The consequences. So we're going to take, I think we'll take one more comment, then we'll have a break. We're going to take a break just a little bit early. There are some surveys around that you may have. We'd like for you to get those filled out during the break. We'll take probably about a 10-minute break. So we'll take one more comment, unless there's a really burning comment. So, okay, please.
Hi, I'm Maya. Sorry, I didn't plan on talking, so I'm a little nervous. But I have a couple of stories. They're not about me, which is not, I guess, too shocking, unfortunately. One is about a really good friend of mine who's Guatemalan, who was walking home from work. He's been here for 15 years and has a young daughter. And he was stopped, the same questions, where are you going, where are you coming from? Thrown in jail because he had a noise citation from years ago he didn't even know about, still pending, and then lost that job and was unemployed for 8-9 months. And these are the kinds of stories that it totally changes a person's ability to have a livelihood and to feel like they can participate in our communities and our lives in this town in a meaningful way. And that's something that affects you psychologically in a larger way than can be described. To be stripped of the ability to have a job or to have a livelihood. And the other is that I've been driving for 10 years, and I speed a lot. There's no law enforcement. And for the past about 2 years, I've been dating a young black man, and I have been pulled over in the last 2 years 4 times. I've never been pulled over before in my life, only when he's in the car. They always ask him questions as well. I'm always driving, he doesn't have a license. They ask him for identification, they ask him why we're out so late or where we're going, even if they've already asked me and I've already answered. And I guess the psychological impact on me is not important to me, although it is frustrating and infuriating. I just can't start to express the way that that impacts people who are sitting in the other seat or who have that experience. I can't say that because I don't have that experience, but obviously, it should be obvious to this committee that that has real psychological and lifelong impacts on folks who are getting mistreated for no reason.
Thank you. Why don't we take a little 10-minute break and then. So I want to just, this is my disclaimer, okay? This is my disclaimer. I'm not on the committee. I don't work for the city of Urbana. I didn't make up the survey. So when you go home and you're talking to your friends, you're saying, you know, that guy who was facilitating didn't know a damn thing about what we were doing. That's my disclaimer. I don't. Okay? So, but I'm going to walk us through this, this next section. And what we're going to do is we're just going to look at the questions in the survey and talk a little bit about those questions. Before we do that, does anyone have any comments that they want to make about the earlier part of the day? Anything that stuck out in your head that sits with you? Yes, ma'am. If you ever feel like there's something you'd like to talk about, please feel free. One of the things that stuck with me, that really stuck with me, and that a couple of people mentioned during the break, came up to me in particular during the break and mentioned, is just the fear that so many citizens feel when the police are around or when they are stopped by the police. And the idea of asking you to raise your hand if you feel afraid when the police stop you just came because of what the young man was saying about him feeling afraid when he stopped. I must have done something wrong. What's wrong? What's going to happen? And it made me think about, I mean, I'm a grown man. It made me think about my own fear when I'm stopped by the police. Yes? Mike will give you Pete will give you
I would just like to relate one quick story. I've lived in Urbana about 11 years. I've been stopped once because I ran through a stop sign on Vine and McHenry, and the officer stopped me, and I'm not fearful of the police. I'm not scared of the police. I don't mind if the police stop me. We've always had comfortable conversations, and if I did something wrong, I got a ticket. But the officer said, "Did you know you went through the stop sign?" I said, "No, I wasn't aware of it." He said, "Well, you need to be more alert. Next time, just pay a little bit more attention." He didn't give a written warning. He never wrote a ticket, and I was on my way. And I guess when I talk to people about traffic stops, for example, mostly it's people that look like me, and their experiences often are similar to mine, especially white males. And I think the difficulty sometimes we have is we cannot transpose the experience of people of color's experience of traffic stops to the experiences that I have. And all I can do is listen and trust that what they are saying is the truth in their experience, and what I'm experiencing is the truth in mine. And that's the issue, I think, that's kind of surfacing.
And I think that's one of the valuable things about this, the way that the committee wanted to structure this particular meeting. We all know that there's a lot of work to be done in our community to make it a place where everyone is comfortable and welcome. But the idea of just being able to stop and get a sense of what that experience is like, you know, for citizens in the city of Urbana, I think is actually really important. Any other comments that anyone would like to add? Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, I really didn't want to stand and speak, but I'd just like to share my experience. I'm a resident, well, I had been a resident of Urbana and moved because of some of the experiences that I've had with the police. I moved out of state and moved back to Rantoul, and that's where I experienced most of my pullovers. During that time, for a lot of my pullovers, I was put on house arrest and had to do 30 days house arrest. At that time, I was a student at Eastern. I'm a single parent with 3 children, and I had a job here in the community that having that happen caused a lot of embarrassment, lost a job opportunity, caused me to drop out of school, and created a lot of social problems for me. I think something needs to be done. I have a lot of solutions. Rather than giving someone misdemeanors or causing a law-abiding citizen to lose their ability to live in the community. I have a distrust of the police, and just given the events that have happened in America, I'm scared for my son to interact with the police. I've since corrected all of my problems and asked to be reinstated to have my license. I got it back. I'm doing okay, but it's been a long journey trying to get through it. So I think something like this is very important, and I'm glad to stand up and be heard.
Earlier in the day, people were talking about the broader impact of folks being stopped. Martell in particular sort of mentioned the financial consequences for people, loss of employment, and just how devastating these stops can be. So let me tell you what your charge is for the next couple of minutes. All of you should have completed one of these surveys. There should be 1 or 2 blank copies of the survey at your table. So what we would like you to do is just to look through this as a group, and if there is a particular question or a couple of questions from the survey that resonate with you, then we'd like to have a little bit of a conversation about that question or those particular questions. So maybe as a group you can look through. I'll just give you an example. With question 1 is, what are your reasons for being here today? And again, the committee is very interested in being able to document the impact of traffic stops on citizens in Urbana. And I know that there are people who have expressed some frustration with some concrete action sort of coming out of the committee's work. And so for me, that makes that question, although it seems like a really simple question, I came here because Patricia Avery threatened me. It seems like a really simple question, but as I think about what we talked about earlier today, it is actually a very complicated question. We all may be in different places in terms of why we are here. But again, I want you to understand what we're trying to do is do exactly what you did for us, Alita, which is to sort of document the real impact in people's lives. Yes, ma'am.
Just want to be clear on the instruction. So the instruction is to take a little. So I just want to be clear on the instruction. The instructions take a little time to complete the survey, then discuss at your table, and then you'll be talking about questions that were the most kind of.
So what I'd like for you, let's make it. What I'd like for you to do is maybe
with the folks at your table, pick 2 questions from the survey you'd like us to talk about.
Okay, perfect.
How about that?
Thank you.
All right, so why don't we start with one table and the questions on the survey that either generated some discussion for you or that you really want to talk a little bit more about. And Pete, would you help with the microphone?
Right here. Right there. Yes. Sorry. Who's up? Yes.
And you can also feel free to talk a little bit about the conversation that happened at your table. Like I was eavesdropping over here for a little bit, and I heard Nicole say it's a family matter, and which was very interesting because we think about a police officer and some individual person out on the street, but this woman, I think other people sort of talk about how these stops can reverberate through a family, and certainly they can reverberate through a community. So if there were interesting comments or insights at your table, feel free to share those as well. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon. We were looking at or discussing question 10. And I was saying, well, as far as my experiences are concerned, almost 100 years, it's sort of ambiguous. You know? When I was in Louisiana, I was president of my Kiwanis Club, and we used to give awards to the outstanding policemen, you know, of the month, or that sort of thing. And then, in other instances, when I've been stopped or profiled, I understood that I also had to be pleasant and clever to not get injured or have anything, even get out of the ticket. But I remember one time I told the police officer I was glad he stopped me because I was afraid. We were coming from Washington and we were in the mountains. And I said, well, I'm certainly glad, you stopped me because I was really afraid of my life. I couldn't slow down, these mountains. I'm in Illinois, we're every mountains. And so he laughed at me and he said, look, just slow down. So that was one of the times where it really worked. Now, one thing that I did tell my son, in his rite of passage speech, I suppose, I told him, I said, now son, understand this, that one day you will be stopped by the police. You may even be arrested by the police for nothing. For nothing, I said, but remain calm. Don't get sassy, don't get smart, don't get logical, just be amenable and be cautious. And if it happens and we're here, just call us and we'll work on it. And it's sort of like a catch-22. You see the 2 neighborhoods. I remember once I was being cracked, I suppose, with the policeman. I said, if you watch your neighborhood as much as you watch ours, you'd have more of you people in jail than us. And he looked at me and said, yeah, I didn't get any exchange with that, but I said, hey, you were talking about I call it a gauntlet. I don't know, years ago, I guess I'm a little age or so. I think it was Clint Eastwood with Gauntlet. And he had to go through this, they kept shooting the bus and that sort of thing. They had all these policemen. Now, I remember being out on the North End and seeing the one police car would go around the block, and then a few seconds later, another police car would go around the block really slow, and then another, what's going on over here? Just going around in circles. And I've had the same experience in looking at, when we were playing Little League, we were out on McKinley, Yankee Ridge area, and one of the kids on the team said, police cars passing. I said, yeah. I said, pass all the time. I said, no, police are never passing all the time. And I think that particular idea, and it's hard. I know it's difficult.
to see that it's supposed to be protect and serve. And you realize it's protect and serve because, you know, if I'm having a problem, first thing I want to do is call the police. But when you have that sense of innocence, and then and then the guilt comes, and it's not your fault or you have anything to do with it, it becomes a real problem. And it is. I'm not a psychologist either, psychiatrist, but I know it has something. Even the scripture tell you, you know, you shouldn't fear. And if you know, when you fear, it can mess up all your health and everything else.
So that was a question for all of you at the table. This question of sort of sort of thinking about how those experiences with police have an impact among for you and your friends. What was your other question that?
Number 12.
Okay.
The recommendations of what we should do in the future. I know that police officers get trained at the Police Training Institute on the whole issue of racial profiling. And I'm going to try to find out what the continuing education is on this. And obviously, since it's such a very public issue right now, I think we have to work on that. And I think that the question for minorities, obviously there's different treatments and different experiences depending on where you live, but I think we need to have a dialogue with minorities about what their suggestions are on what things could be done to improve the situation. How do you interact with police officers? And how do we figure out how to increase the trust, because the community does need to be able to trust the police. And right now there's a lot of danger to young black men from other young black men, and there are people who are afraid to talk to the police. So we need to deal with that.
So do we know if there are, in Urbana in particular, if there are people that are bringing young black men, young men of color together with the police for conversations? Is that happening anywhere? Does anyone? Okay.
One of the Greek organizations, Kappa Alpha Psi, they have a group called Kappa League, and so I know they have different conversations with their young men about how to be successful in your community. So that may be one of the conversations that they're having as well.
Okay, sort of how to be successful with law enforcement.
Right.
Okay. Why don't we stay with your table? Because I know y'all had a lively, even though you didn't follow the instructions.
Yes, we did.
But I know y'all had a lively, spirited conversation.
Well, one of the things that we talked a little bit about was the fact that at our table, we haven't been stopped, but the children of people have been stopped. And so there's some issues around, is it the car? Is it what is it that causes the young people to be stopped? So I will shift this over to you, or you.
Okay, I'll just pick up on where you left off. What ended up happening with our conversation over here, our discussion, my son had been stopped, and there were several officers that pulled up to stop him. We're thinking it's based on the style of car that he had at the time, and it took 6 officers to pull him over when he turned from off of 4th Street onto University to turn into the AutoZone parking lot. So technically, I guess when you actually make a right turn, you're supposed to turn in the lane closest to you, put your signal on and get over. But if you're drifting down University, AutoZone is basically immediately right there when you make that turn. So it's almost impossible to do. However, that experience, nothing took place. They ended up apologizing to him. But I think the impact that 6 officers pulling up, and he's never been in any trouble before, he was actually just home from college. It did something to him psychologically, I believe. You know, maybe minor, maybe not, but what came out of it is when he's home now, and if he's out late visiting a friend or just whatever is taking place, When he comes home, he takes the long way home. And I didn't realize that he takes the long way home until one night he happened to call and say, "Are you hungry? I'm going to Steak and Shake. Would you like a burger?" It took almost an hour for me to get a burger, and we literally lived 5 minutes, 3 to 5 minutes from Steak and Shake. So I had a concern, so I'm thinking, well, maybe he just stopped off somewhere else. And when he gets home, I'm like, my burger is probably cold by now. And he told me, he said, well, you know, when I'm out and if it's late, I take the long way home. And I was like, what's the long way home? I didn't understand because I wasn't thinking about something that happened 2-3 years prior that is still sort of having an effect on him when he's home. So he proceeds to tell me this route that he takes is clearly out of the way. I'm sure he uses an extra gallon of gas just to do that. You were also discussing how that affects me, because now that I know that, when he's home, I don't sleep at night until he's back in the house. Or if, you know, when he gets certain places, and he's an adult now, you know, and I'm saying, well, can you text me when you get there? Or can you text me when you're on your way home? And I shouldn't have to do that. Especially with him, you know, advancing, and he hasn't been in any trouble, you know, but it impacts family as well as not just simply the person that's being stopped continuously or whatever, and that only happened to him one time. So what we were sitting here discussing, I can imagine what it does to people who are stopped multiple times. So that's kind of how it took shape, and then we've all had the same similar, most of us, experience that it affects us, you know, as family members as well.
So do you all think that it's, because you think that's especially, do you especially worry about boys and young men as opposed to young women? So I'd like to hear maybe some, and just wondering about any difference in that regard.
The situation that we had, my daughter, she works at Prairie, and it was her lunch break, and she drives a old, and it's like one of those cars that everyone's trying to get, because every time she goes to the gas station, people want to say, your car for sale? She don't want to sell
It must be for sale.
But she was on the lot, and it was her lunchtime, and she was on the phone, and she put down the phone, but then she was coming home. And all of a sudden, when she got to the first stop sign, there was a unmarked car behind her, and then the lights started going on. And he stopped her, and he asked her, what's she doing at the school? She said, I work there. I'm on my way home from lunch. And she said, why did you stop me? He said, you know you need to put your signal on 50 yards before you come to a stop.
Not 49 and a half yards.
She said, I didn't know that. And he said, that's why I'm stopping you. He said, where are you going? I'm going home for lunch. I work at the school. You can go into the school and ask the principal. And her car is just old, but she's been stopped 3 times because of her car.
Oh.
So, once they run.
Now, did the cops say?
No, the cops did not
stop
say
you
that.
because of this car?
No.
Okay, but that's what y'all sort of figured out.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's kind of interesting to think about the impact on males versus females. Yeah, please.
I mean, I'd like to add, I'm a result of what happens as of the stops, to where I pick up with the 30 days of having to face either possibly going to jail or being confined to my home. I was lucky enough to be confined to my home, but I am a single parent, and that was like total loss of control. Me asking my 10-year-old to have responsibility to now be the parent because I can't walk the dog, or I can't take out the trash, or explain that to the school, and just the stigma that they faced behind having their mother locked in the house. I couldn't grocery shop. I had to work 16 hours a day. I tried to figure out ways to outsmart the system. Okay. But I worked 16-hour shifts, 30 days in a row, so that I could get out of the house to buy food. I mean, my kids hate pizza because that was my only source of being able to feed them if I wasn't allowed to grocery shop. I do have a friend that's going to court tomorrow. She instead is not as lucky as me or as educated and did 75 days in the county jail and experienced losing her home. I mean, her daughter is scared of the police at all times. You know, my kids have had to grow up a little bit faster than what they would have normally had to do because of my experience. And I just think that, you know, I'm big on race relations and, you know, trying to be the best that I can be at all times. But I mean, that was very depressing. I had to move around my house with an extension cord on my ankle. Sleep with my feet hanging out of the bed, be dressed at all times and ready to go to jail. Should they come to my house and decide to pick me up if I violated it for the smallest things. I mean, my dog ran out of the house one time and I couldn't go get him, you know. I think just it's humiliating, number one, and that was a big toll on me. When they do like a random search at night and they came to my house at 4 a.m., and I had to pull back the covers, you know what I mean, on my children in the bed, waking up with a flashlight, just having some random man in your house. 4 a.m. I had a lot of free movement, and I was able to drive during that time, so I was one of the lucky ones, because most of the people that got the ankle bracelet on, you know, couldn't drive. I lived in Rantoul at the time. I mean, imagine having to keep a cell phone on you, and every time that phone rings, you have to answer it and talk to whoever this big brother is watching me. I mean, it was very embarrassing and degrading as a woman to be treated that way. I've never been to jail before. I consider myself a law-abiding citizen, and it was just really degrading. I mean, I felt like I lived in the 50s and 60s and had my rights stripped.
Thank you, thank you. Did you all want to have anything, did you have anything else from that table you want to make sure that we have heard? Okay, all right.
So, I've never told this story in public before. It's kind of painful because I think there's nothing more painful for a parent than being unable to protect their child. Our African-American son got into an argument with another young man, a white young man, on a basketball court. And the other person, at a certain point, went back to his car, came back with a baseball bat, and attacked my boy with it. He wasn't permanently injured. He went to the hospital, was treated for a concussion. Plenty of witnesses. Should have been assault with a deadly weapon. Could have been killed. The state's attorney at the time, not the present state's attorney, but a previous one, I won't name him except to say that he was of the opposite political party from mine, and he's now a judge, refused to charge the assailant with anything more than a misdemeanor. And kid came out of the court, skipping down the stairs, high-fiving his friend. And I never, and I think I'm speaking for Naomi too, I never felt so helpless and angry in our lives because we couldn't figure out how to make that situation right. And I just believe totally that was a situation of racial bias. It wasn't at the hands of the police, but it was at the hands of the legal justice system that did not value our boy's safety or even his life.
I think what I'm moved by, if I think about the way that people describe their emotional experience or emotional experiences from these stops, you hear words like fear,
humiliation, anger, and it gives you a sense of why these stops can have such a profound psychological impact on a person. So you talked about your friend's daughter. Someone during the break talked about their son, who as a child wanted to be a police officer, and whose sister wanted to be a police officer. And as a consequence of a stop, the way they described it is that stop changed him psychologically. That can be hard to put your finger on, except for if you're a parent or if you're close to somebody and you know that reality. So we're not just talking about, you know, I was on my way home and I got stopped and the cop was a jerk and took 15 minutes out of my schedule and it was an inconvenience. And when I was listening to you and I was thinking about this table and I was thinking about when you're at home and you know that your boy child is out and could be stopped, what's the fear? Is the fear that he gets stopped by the police and it's a hassle? I don't think so. I think the fear is he gets stopped by the police and he gets killed. And so I think earlier today, when we said, well, how many of us are afraid? I think sort of the bottom line behind that is that when you're in that circumstance, you're completely powerless. You're vulnerable to being humiliated. And there's absolutely nothing that you can do about it because your life may just be hanging on a misunderstanding. And that's really powerful for people in our community to be having these experiences all the time, all the time. Yes, sir.
Last month, I experienced, I was over by Centennial, and I was having a fun time with my friends, and it was late at night. I think it was around like 9 o'clock, and it was about 4 of us in the hallway. We just talking, and he lived there, and we all just left his house. And we're waiting on our ride to come, and I guess someone complained. They said a couple of kids are in the hallway, and I guess they're being loud. We was being a little loud, but the lady came out and asked us nicely to be quiet, so we didn't say anything. So he went home. It's just 3 of us in the hallway, and all of a sudden, our ride shows up. We gets ready to walk down the stairs. Our officer walks up the stairs like, where are you guys going? I tell him like, we're leaving. He's like, well, you have to wait a minute because someone said you guys was being loud and obnoxious. So he said, I need to run all names. And me not knowing that I was with a friend who had a warrant out for his arrest, he got arrested, and my other friend, he did everything the officer asked him to, so did I. And apparently, after they let us go, some big, huge, like, I don't know, he was like 6'8", came up behind us, and we like, why is this necessary? We just said, well, we running names, and you guys are not able to go, but the other officer is gonna let us go. He said, I've seen you kids before over here, and you're trespassing. Now, I haven't been in these apartments for like some months, and I never knew that, well, if you didn't live there, you're not allowed over there. So the officer took it up and told us to get up, and he got to searching us. And I'm like, how can you search us when we haven't did nothing? We're not destroying any property. We're not doing anything but getting ready to leave. I understand we was being loud, but there's no reason for you to search someone when we're not bodily harming anyone in the building. So he ended up letting us go. And my friend, I walked to the car, he walked up behind me, and the officer suddenly just shoved him, like just gave him a little push and said, get out of here. And when I looked, like, I turned around like, what was that for? Like, you just put your hands on a person and he didn't do anything. So his brother was right there, and his brother took it the next day to the courtroom, I believe it was, and they talked about it, and the judge said, well, it could have been a reason that he pushed him. And we're sitting there like, this don't give you any reason to put your hands on someone and then no one do anything to you. I could see if he was loud, being disrespectful, and not listening to what you were saying. You asked us to leave, you left. So I don't feel that you should put your hands on someone because you feel like just because you're the law, you can do what you want. Like my mom has always told me, just because you have the higher authority of someone don't mean you can sit up here and just boss someone around. Because at the end of the day, when you don't have your badge on, your clothes on, you're off duty, you're a regular citizen, just like everyone else. And I feel you should treat us as a citizen just like you want to be treated. And I put it as, imagine if that was your kid in the hallway and the officer pushed your child and your child didn't do anything. How would you feel about it? And I just felt very like valid because like we didn't do anything, and I just felt like this could have escalated to more than just a push. It could have escalated to him coming up to the car, you know, doing anything. Now, I'm not saying it's like a racist thing because it couldn't have or it could have, but I'm not saying it is. But in certain situations, there is a certain limit to things, and you should limit everything you do in this world. So if you're an officer, no matter how high you is, think about whether it's your child or anyone else close to you and how they would feel if they got assaulted by an officer or anyone.
Thank you for that. Martel?
Just listen to a story. It really moves me. I'm a person that has 2 sons that's been beat up by police officers. My oldest and my youngest. Both of them was in handcuffs. And I'm not here to police bash at all. I got plenty of police friends, but I don't let people know who my police friends is because I won't get the information I get from the police departments. But they're tired of some of the stuff that goes on with the police departments. We got officers that want to be good officers. But then we have knucklehead officers like what he ran into. That's what the problem is. And when the mayor said that we got black on black crime with kids shooting at kids, they don't come to the police officers. Because when you have an experience with a person that's oppressing you, you're not going to go to them for help. That's why with Champaign police officers, when I talked to when Cobb became the police chief, first thing I asked for him to do to make sure officers be professionals in my community. Because if they're not being professionals in the community is not going to ask them for help. From his experience, I don't know if he would call the police or he would say, you know what, they ain't here to do me no good. I may call them and I go to jail. And I can tell by so much experience with police officers. I'm going to tell you about one that I had. And when he said they ran his name, I called the police one time to remove a stolen bike from my backyard. Because my youngest sons wanted to keep it. I said, no, I'm going to call the police. When the police came to my house, I'm telling them about the bike. They tell me they need my ID. I said, you need my ID? I said, what you need my ID for? He said, because I'm going to call it again. I said, for what? I called you to remove a bike. So I'm talking to him through a steel door. So he tells me I got to step outside to talk to him because I called him to remove a bike out my yard. So I said, I'm not going to step outside. I'm not going to give you my ID. I don't care if you leave the bike in my backyard. I'm trying to teach. I got my 2 sons sitting there trying to teach what they do when they find something that they can't keep it. And the police is at my house to investigate me for calling them. And when we talk about traffic stop, that's one issue. We got to talk about tactics, how our community is treated. And I'm glad they have a survey about traffic stops. We got to talk about how our community want to be treated by the police. Like Daryl said, he don't go through the same kind of situation with the police. It's a, how you doing, sir? What you doing, sir? all this, us, hey, you need to get out of the car. You mind if I search your car? Why are you stopping? I don't have to tell you why I'm stopping. It's a whole different ballgame. We got to deal with the actions of we allow our police to do. We have to set a standard. It's how you treat everybody. You can't pick and choose how you treat individuals. When you go out here, this is your professional standards. You tell these young people, you tell these people why they're being stopped. And if I'm gonna search your car, I'll tell you why I'm gonna search your car. But then we gotta tell our kids they got the right not to have their car searched. You know, no, you can't search my car. Here go my ID. Yeah, I got insurance. You know, those are the things that we got to talk about. We don't have a real discussion, not only about traffic stops, let's have a discussion about professionalism. And that's what he didn't get to see, the professionalism. And that's what's having an effect on how some of our kids react. If you got a kid, he ain't never been stopped, and we got a kid that's been stopped from the day he got a license from 16, by he's 20, he's been stopped 14 times. You know, them are the things we got to deal with. Having this conversation, having this meeting, I've been to 500 of them. After 500 meetings, I've probably been to 5 meetings that didn't come out to make solutions. This is what we want. We want solutions to the problem. I don't want a meeting. If we have another meeting and we leave here, ain't talking about no solution, I'm not coming back. You know, because I'm working for solutions, and that's what I want to leave with here. We'll have another meeting, we come up with solutions, not only for the traffic stops, about how we want our people treated in our community. Thank you.
Thanks, Martel. It sounded like the mayor was proposing something with the Police Training Institute around racial profiling, and maybe the same thing around professionalism, and maybe some way of connecting. Why don't we, I think this table, then this table, it's just about 4 o'clock, so we'll find out questions that resonated, that were of interest to this table here, and then we'll move to the next table. We look like it's about 4 o'clock. We're looking a little bit draggled here. A few more minutes, and then. Is anyone? So we can go on to another table.
I said the one question that resonated with me was number 9 about the psychological, emotional, financial impact that being pulled over. Well, I had like 2 stories, and then there. One is a little older, and one is very recent. And the first one, I was riding with a friend who's a colleague from Chicago, and we're definitely not in our teens. And we were on our way to dinner, and he drives a Subaru, and he's a white male, and he's driving. I'm on the passenger side. And we've been chatting, and we noticed a car behind us. But I noticed it, I don't think he did. It's one of those reactions you get when you're black and you leave the house. You know, your radar, your spidey sense automatically goes up. So we're driving, and then we're going down Florida. And after about 10 minutes, you know, the lights come on, it's an unmarked car, and we get pulled over, and he wants to see the driver's license. My friend's from Chicago, so we have the Chicago sticker in the window. He wants to see a driver's license and registration, that's okay. Now I'm sitting there, and he wants to see mine. Now, I'm not driving. We're going to dinner. Sure, you know, I kind of know what the drill is. I give him my driver's license. And we're sitting there for like 20 minutes. Trying to, you know, they're back there, and I guess they're running his plates, they're running everything. So after about 20 minutes, they just come back and give us our license and, well, you can go on. Which is, you know, really disconcerting. But the most recent one, my son and I just got back, we were in Chicago for a weekend, and we just got home. And I don't have a car, but I rent one. And we were coming from Walmart. So when you have a car, you like to get the errands done, or those things that you can't do on the bus. So we're driving down Main, coming from Walmart, and we're going past the gas station that used to be Collins Gas. And there are like 4 or 5 police cars there, and I guess they had 2 or 3 cars pulled over. And we're just driving, and like everyone else, you kind of rubberneck and look. But okay, I haven't stopped driving, but I'm still at the speed limit. and then one of the police cars pulls out and follows us. Now, I was on my way home, but this freaked me out, so I don't know what's gonna happen. So I just kept driving. I drove, and I know I needed to go to another grocery store, so I drove to County Market. He followed me all the way from Maine and Cottage Grove, all the way to County Market. And I guess something happened. His lights flashed up, he drove off and left us. Now, my son and I are in the car. Really, this really freaked me out. I didn't know what would happen. I don't know, I'm driving the speed limit. I get, like I said, before I make a turn, I put on a turn signal. I don't know how many feet before I even get to the stop sign. I just played all the precautions because I don't know what's gonna happen. It's not the first time I've been followed while driving. It's not the first time I've been pulled over. Driving the speed limit, being told that your tail light is out when you know the tail light is not out. So these are the things that really impact me. My son doesn't have a license, so I drive. And when he gets a license, that really worries me because I have a nephew who's dying of his license. And I worry about when he gets one, if he's gonna get pulled over. Because these are not, you know, they have this profile idea of a black man or a black woman, you know, when you get that, you know, you're either a criminal or you're up to something. And you're neither doing that. You know, you could be dressed to the nines and still get pulled over as a criminal. You could be dressed like I am and still be considered profiled as a criminal. But being followed and not being with the fear, if I drive home, is he gonna want to come in my house? Is he gonna search the car? So I just keep driving until I find what I consider a safe area. If something happens, there are gonna be people around to witness this. So that's the emotional, you know, impact of it because you don't know what's gonna happen. And with all the shootings that's been going on, it's not just black males. A lot of times they actually forget they're black females who get, you know, shot. Or like the woman in California who was pummeled by the cop on the side of the road because they claimed she was walking through the highway. You know, you don't have to be somebody in the head to arrest them. So even if you get followed, you know, if something's gonna happen, I want witnesses around. Because I'm not doing anything, I have no weapons, I'm not drugs or anything, but you don't know what's gonna happen if you get pulled over or, you know, at certain traffic stops.
Thank you. All right, let's, how about the table behind you? Any particular question from the survey that resonates?
Yeah, the one that we talked about were really number 5, that they were treated fairly and that they were treated with respect. And it's what a lot of other people have been referring to, that when my son is stopped, he has been nothing but respectful every time. And in fact, he's constantly telling me, Mom, it's just gonna happen, you know, stop getting so upset about it, nothing's gonna change. But, you know, asking him the same questions over and over again after him saying the answer to one thing, them trying, you know, asking again, you know, again about the toy in his car. Why do you have that toy in your car? Just being treated in the way where he ended up out in the cold for so long. That has never happened to any of my white family. We don't end up out in the cold for an hour when we're stopped. He, you know, is, one time they said the thing about the wipes, they must have smelled the alcohol in the baby wipes, and they used that as just reason to search his car. He hesitates to tell them that they can't search his car because he doesn't want to, you know, look like he's hiding anything. And so I know he has the right to say that, but just the disrespect that he's treated with. And something else that we talked about as parents, the fear that we have for our children. I mean, my son has been stopped dozens of times. He's been respectful every time. When is it going to be just too much? When is he going to have had a bad day at work and be only slightly disrespectful and end up getting hurt by the police? And that is my fear, is that my son or one of my grandchildren will have had enough and will end up getting hurt by the police. I mean, my son's had his face slammed against the car for nothing. That is enough damage. And for anybody that, hasn't had this happen to their child, but most of you have. I would rather it happen to me, happening to me. It's just fear that we should not have to go through.
Any other comments on that? I want to just point out one thing, and this might be really obvious. This might be really obvious to all the rest of you. But while you were telling your story, Dontrell? While Dontrell was telling her story, one of the things that I was thinking about is when you hear people tell these stories about police doing things that are unbelievable. Now, is it just me, or do you have, like, in the back of your head, you're saying, well, you must have done something. Like, you must have been standing wrong. You must have said the wrong thing. And it begins to undermine your confidence in your fellow citizens, right? You begin to think of your fellow citizens, well, you must have been a little out of line. Because it's incredible that the police would just come and stop you for no reason, right? So you must have been a little bit out of line. So then if people are a little bit out of line, then that means they're criminal, right? And if the police begins to treat people like they're criminal, and we begin to suspect them like they're criminal, then they begin to lose more and more rights, right? And we begin to tell our children, yeah, let the police search your car. Why do you get to search my car? You know, I'm an American citizen. Why do you just get to pull me over and search my car? If I'm not criminal, if I'm speeding, my taillights are broken, that makes sense. But we begin to suspect that all of these people that have been pulled over, all of these people that have been stopped, they must be doing something wrong. And then when you start talking about that in terms of race, then we begin to suspect, well, these black boys just don't know how to act in the street. These black boys got to get their acts together. These black people just don't know how to act. These black people are just criminal. That's why the police stops. So for me, over the course of the day, I've been aware of my own thinking in that regard. Well, what's really happening when these stops take place, right? And how it undermines our trust in each other as citizens. These stops. So Patricia was going to end us out. It's about 4 o'clock. Were there any other final comments?
I just want to say that, like, I'm really scared for our community as a whole. You know, like, everything that affects one of us affects all of us, and it increases the background level of stress. You know, whatever happens on that day of a stop or an incident with a police officer doesn't just affect that day. It doesn't even just affect the day where they have to go to court or deal with the fine, or even the days where you have to be under house arrest. I mean, that stress just builds up over time and impacts how we, you know, treat each other as neighbors or as family or as a community. And, you know, I live at an intersection where there's an apartment complex right behind my house. And my house has no insulation, unfortunately, but that means that I hear everything that goes on in the parking lot of that apartment complex. And I hear people yelling and shouting and having these fights all the time. And I know that it's not just people behaving badly. It's that background level of stress that keeps cropping up because of these policies, because of the way that, you know, society treats these people, the way that the police treat these people, that it causes, you know, friction. And it's destroying us as a community. That's why we have a fractured community. And I really want something to be done. I want these people to be taken seriously. Because otherwise, you know, we're not going to have a community at all.
Thank you.
Well, we've heard a lot today, and I have to tell you, after hearing some of these stories, I hear so many, Mike, and every time I hear them, sometimes it's just unbelievable. I think I heard it all, and then I hear something else that had occurred during a traffic stop, or for just a minor traffic stop, and how they can just spiral into these humiliating implications, and how these impacts range from psychological, we talked about the financial, the emotional, a lot of emotional impacts that not only impacts the driver or the person that's being stopped, but how it impacts the family. This mom who has to rely on her family now to do things that she has always done for the family, and how it's now creating a situation where her children have to grow up a lot faster than she probably wants them to, or by a mother not being able to sleep at night because her son or her daughter or his son or his daughter is out driving around, just being black is what I hear. Just being followed for no reason at all. You know you're following every law, I mean all of the laws, and you're just driving around, and you don't know at any particular point in time you're going to be stopped. I heard from a 30-year-old elected official who was driving around in a car whose tire touched a curb and was stopped, and was given a citation for something that she didn't even know what it was about. This is very one of these issues that I actually have to thank the council once again for allowing us to drill down and find some solutions to these problems, because we've been talking about it, and I can hear the frustration coming from some of the people who are here today. We've been talking about this issue for a very long time. We know that these racial disparities exist. Now what are we going to do about them? That's what people want. More than anything, what are we going to do about them? I don't want this to be another one of those task force that I'm working on, that we do donate our time to. And I'm getting much older, and so I don't have a whole lot of time to just keep fighting and looking at these and studying and researching and talking about these issues when we know there's a problem. And it all boils down to, what do we want to do? It's really about people interacting with people. It's how we treat each other. It boils down to that. You know, of course, that we know that there are going to be some legitimate traffic stops. There are going to be some violations, moving violations that need ticketing. But are we going too far? And how do we want our police to police? There have been a number of cases that I've heard where multiple cars are called in on one stop. Is that how we want to spend our tax dollars? Do we want our officers to pull over one car and then you have 5 other cars on that one stop? Is that how we want to spend our money? I don't think so. But I want to tell you that your coming out today has certainly been very helpful to us. Don't think that your time here today has been wasted. We really do appreciate it very much. And we're going to take this back. And I want to promise you, you got your mayor here and half of your city council here. These are the people that make the decisions. They are here today. So they heard your stories. And I truly believe that they want to make a difference, because it has got to change. As this young man says, this is not the kind of society we want to live in, where we're walking and driving in fear. That's unhealthy for not only the people who are the victims of these stops that are out of control, but it's not healthy for anyone in the community. So we've got to find solutions. I thank you so much. We are going to have a report. That report will be online at some point in time. Hopefully sometimes this summer. Our work is supposed to kind of wrap up in the spring. So we should have it. And we have please leave your surveys here and we'll take them. And I think there's a website. And you can check the URL. It's at the bottom of the survey. So you guys make sure you get that information so you can check with us. We will have a report. But more so, we want results. And you guys might be called upon to come back out. So once we get that report, we want to make sure that the council takes this report very seriously, so we may have you guys come out and say, well, what are we going to do about it? Yes, they have problems over there too. They have a huge disparity. Absolutely. That's right. Traffic stop. Racial profiling. That's right. Thank you, Sam.
And so I said, well, you know, like, anybody you hear gunshots, you're gonna run. You're not gonna just stand up there if you see gunshots. He said, yes, I know it, but we want to question him. I said, well, he's already told you that he don't know what happened. When he hears the gunshots, he just started running. He didn't try to look and find out what's going on. So he went on to tell this young boy, yes, I know your father, which his father just died a couple months before. I know your father because I was one of the first ones that arrested him. And so that was intimidation right there to this young boy, you know, and which was completely out of place.
Out of line.
And my thing is that until we get more Afro-American men on the police forces and fire department and places like that where they have a lot of impact on the community, we haven't did anything because most of these police officers are coming from small communities where they didn't have any contact with Afro-Americans until they got on these
Before they got a badge and a gun. That's right.
We didn't lead this meeting. We ain't picked up one problem to find a solution for. I wish we pick up 100. Let's pick one that we want to work on in the city of Urbana, and maybe it'll carry over in Champaign.
Okay.
But just pick up one thing that we see that's wrong, that we want to change. Like I said, we having these meetings. Like I said, this has been going on me since 2004.
You're right.
And now it's 2015. So let's find something that we want to deal with that concerns our police department and the black community that we wanted to stop. Then we will have some young men that want to be police officers. Like I said, I got a daughter
That's right.
that wanted to be a police, wanted to be forensic. What happened to her younger brother, she didn't pull that off the table. And my daughter is very capable of being a police officer. Her best friend that want to be police officer says 5 years old. Marquisha is a police officer in Carbondale. But she don't even want to come back here to be a police officer for the climate that she done seen in this county.
Well,
She went out to LA and applied before she came back to Champaign, Urbana and applied. That's how she feels about the place she grew up in the police. So
well, and I think I think that it serves two purposes. If we get more diversity on our police force, I think it gives the community a sense of they see more officers patrolling their neighborhoods that look like them, but it also gives the other officers who have not had those experiences, those cultural experiences with people who don't look like them, to get to know these people. And maybe they'll start to see people who don't look like them in a different way and earn a different kind of sense of understanding and respect. So I think it can work two ways, that their colleagues can get to know their officers who don't look like them, to learn a little bit more about them, and that might help culturally as they patrol these communities that they know nothing about.
So I know you all want to get out of here about 4:20.
Yes, we gotta get going.
But I wanted to add this one last thing, which is that everyone,
people that are here
Grab the
today,
mic.
people that came here today and spent all day here talking about this issue, people in this room, are people that care about this issue and that care about Urbana. And so as we look around for folks to work with and continue to talk about this, you know, let's not forget those of you who came out here because you care about it.